the city was all abuzz because the great Polish virtuoso pianist Ignaz Paderewski was coming to town, and he had included their smallish city for some reason in his national concert tour. There was one mother who was quite pleased because it was difficult to get tickets, and she had obtained 2 prime seats for herself and her 5-year-old son, who had just begun piano lessons, and she hoped that the concert would inspire him. They got to the concert hall somewhat early and found their seats. And then the mother noticed a friend of hers a few rows in front, and she went over to talk to her. And then when the lights flickered, indicating that the program was about to begin, she went back to her seat, and to her dismay, the boy was not there. And before she could decide what to do, the lights went out, the curtain slowly opened, and to her shock, there on the stage, sitting at the very big grand piano, was her son, with one finger playing the one song that he knew, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Apparently he had wandered off and somehow ended up on stage. And again, before she could figure out what, if anything, she could do, the great pianist took his first step onto the stage and stopped dead in his tracks when he saw and heard what was going on. And then a huge smile filled his face, and he strode across the stage and slid onto the piano bench to the left of the boy and whispered to him, "Wonderful, keep playing, don't stop." And then with his left hand, he began improvising a bass figure to the boy's melody. And then he put his right arm around the boy's shoulder and began improvising an obligato over the melody. And then he must have been inspired because he began improvising deeper and richer and more beautiful accompaniments for the boy's Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. The audience, the joy and the excitement in the audience must have reached all the way up to heaven, maybe even higher. And that went on for a while, and when they concluded, they got a huge standing ovation that went on for minutes. And it probably was the highlight of the concert. So, what could have been a disaster for the boy, for the mother, and for the program, for the concert pianist, turned out to be a really great event, and I suspect that everybody in the audience remembered that event with great joy for a long, long time. So what's the lesson? The lesson, I think, is that when life gives us a very sour lemon to suck on, which it has a way of doing, if we're conscious enough and if our hearts are big enough, maybe we can turn that lemon into the most delicious and vivifying lemonade. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. Recently, I participated at a local church in an interfaith discussion of the biblical book of Psalms. And we had an interesting conversation. And then the evening ended. I got my coat, and I was just going out the door of the church when a woman rushed over and grabbed my arm and said, I didn't know whether or not to come tonight, but God told me I had to be there, and you were the reason. As you can imagine, I looked at her with considerable astonishment. And in order to explain what that was about, I have to tell you what I had done in the evening's program. Among other things, I had explicated and sung portions of the second half of the 30th Psalm. And that psalm tells a story. And the story is about a man, rich, powerful, and famous, who says, nothing can touch me. I am one of God's elect. And sure enough, something does touch him. And we don't know in the psalm whether it was a death or an illness or business failure, whatever it was something that really sent him into deep grief. And he goes through all the stages of grief, denial and anger and bargaining and depression and finally acceptance. But then he goes one step beyond acceptance to a place of joy. And so I had sung part of this, and I want to give you the feeling of what happened. So we start out with this guy, this egotistical fella. Vani amarti besharvi balemot leolam Adonai tetzolchem adeta leharari oz. But then something happens, and he doesn't know what to do, what to say. And he says, what is going on here? And you'll hear in the Hebrew the word ma, which means what? Mama, ma, 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 betza, mama, ma, 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 betza, ma, betza bedomi, bedomi, bedomi. Ma betza bedomi. And in this distress, he prays to God, and the text is very beautiful. The text says, God changed my mourning, M-O-U-R-N. God changed my mourning into a dance, and removed my mourning, M-O-U-R-N, clothes, and clothed me in joy. Shem Adonai v'koneni, Adonai ozeri, hafakta mispedi l'macholi. And why was he so blessed? So that he would no longer live a life of negativity, despite the fact of what had happened, but instead would live a life of sacred gratitude. Leman yizamer hakavod Leman yizamecha kavod lo yidom, Adonai Elohai leolam leolam. Odeka. And the evening ended, and I put on my coat, and I was walking out of the church when this woman rushed up to me, grabbed my arm, and said I wasn't sure whether or not to come tonight, but God told me I had to be here, and you were the reason. Well, what turned out is that she had been stricken with a serious illness for which there was no cure. And she had been living for weeks now, moving between depression and anger. And somehow, hearing the psalm and the way it is expressed musically touched something so deep in her that she suddenly realized that despite the reality was there. Despite the reality, she could live a life of joy. Now, I don't tell you this story to praise myself. I certainly did not have the intention of healing anybody's life when I participated in that discussion. But that's the point. Each of us can be an angel for others. And if she had not grabbed me, if I had taken one more step, I would have been out of the church. I would never have known this. So each of us may, unknown to ourselves, be an angel for others. Soon the day will arrive when we will be together. No longer will man live in fear, and the children will play without wondering whether on that day dark new clouds will appear. Wait and see what a world this can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Wait and see what a world this can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Men have fought, men have died to make a new tomorrow. Their promise remains in our hearts. Now the time has arrived with joy and not with sorrow, and a promise to make a new start. Wait and see what a world this can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Wait and see what a world this can be if we share, if we care, you and me. If we share, if we care, you and me.